everyone. So today I wanted to go over how I grade photographs because art is a very subjective subject, and a lot of times I get questions from students about how I determine your grade on something as individual as a photograph. And there are definitely requirements and directions that I give throughout class that can kind of guide your decision making in what types of photographs to take and how to take them. And I wanted to go over some of those requirements today. So it's definitely an art form, grading photography, and it's something that I really enjoy thinking about and talking about and evaluating your work. So in this first project, Anything Goes, I try to be very lenient since this is your very first photography project, and it's, making art is a courageous act because you're not just sharing it between you and me, but it's with the entire class, potentially even the community if we put your artwork on display. So it's a life skill that's worth honing and getting better at. So with each of these scoring guides that I complete, I try and give positive feedback as well as some criticism or some helpful hints for how to progress and get better in the future, because even if I were to do one of these projects, there would still be ways for me to improve. Nobody's perfect, especially in the field of art. It's so individual and very subjective. So I wanted to take the opportunity today to share with you how I grade. All right, so let's see, I lost my, there it is. Okay, so first of all, I just took a sample of student work from last semester so that it's nobody that you know, or it might be someone you know, but it's not in your class. So I designed a scoring guide with Google Drawing. So this I can add, like it has text boxes down here. It's still loading, so it's going to take a minute for me to click on stuff. Up here, this is just a screenshot of my scoring guide that I designed. I'm trying to keep it simple. It's out of a 4-point scale, so 0 would be does not meet expectations, 1 is nearing expectations, 2 is meets expectations, so that's like pretty good, and then exceeds expectations would be a 3, so you get a 3 out of 3 for these different categories. If you have somehow gone above and beyond, maybe arranged your shot instead of just happening upon something, and it means that it has that extra wow factor that makes art very inspiring. So my 3 categories for each photograph that I will be judging are creativity. So are you making unique choices to you? Are you copying off of someone? That would be a lower creativity score. Is the concept very original? Are you creating thought-provoking images that are kind of adding to the imagery of the world in a positive way? So are you being creative? Number 2, I look at composition. So we talked about composition strategies such as using the rule of thirds, framing, break the edge, leading lines. Are you being intentional about including some of these composition strategies in your work? So again, in this first project, I'm pretty lenient because you're just beginning. We're all at different levels, so I'm not penalizing anybody from their starting point. So this is where we're starting from, and as long as you have the quantity of photographs turned in, you should get the grade. And then in future assignments, I will be grading more for quality. So, okay, so you took 100 pictures. What was it of? How was it photographed? Are you being careful with the materials? And then craftsmanship is that last category. This has to do with taking care of the materials. So are you using adequate lighting to illuminate your subject to make it stand out from the background? Are you using selective focus? So the background might be blurry, but is the person in focus, or is everything a little bit blurry? That would affect your craftsmanship grade. Also Photoshop. Are you using the Photoshop techniques in order to make each photo of your final 5 the best version of itself? Those are all some things that go into determining the level of craftsmanship in your work. Okay, so let's go ahead and grade some of these sample photos. I'm going to go over to this first one here, and so I'm thinking of those 3 criteria: creativity, craftsmanship, and composition. So right off the bat, I see that the Composition, they've zoomed in, so they're breaking the edge with a part of their subject. The dog's feet are off the edge. So that really gets us close so we can see the part of the focal point that the photographer really wanted us to focus on, which is the tongue and just how happy that dog looks. So it has, you know, that creative timing. Timing can be another consideration for craftsmanship. Did you miss the shot? Did the ball just leave the scene if you're playing baseball or something? Or is everything captured at the peak of its action? I noticed that the background is blurry, so it kind of has that bokeh effect with those little background blur circles, which is an effective strategy for making your focal point stand out. So we really see this dog, we see the details, we see the, you know, the fur and the texture standing out really well. One thing that I could say might improve this photograph would actually be to zoom out a little bit and include the feet on the scene. So if you crop a portrait at joints, like at your knees or at someone's ankles, it's going to look very awkward, like they're sinking in quicksand. So it's better to either crop at the waist, crop at the head and shoulders, or keep the entire figure in the scene. So zoom out so that the feet are firmly planted on the ground, and we don't get that sense of them sinking into quicksand. So that might be one pointer for making this photograph, this composition, even better. Okay, so let's look at another one. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's give it a grade. So I'm going to say this photo number 1, it's okay. I kind of like the dog's attitude and the creativity of that timing, but the composition could probably be improved. So I'm going to give them an 8 out of 9. And I like grading with blue. It's less negative than like a red letter. Okay. So assignment number, or photo number 2 here. Oh, we have some really interesting shadows at play. So that right there would increase the creativity score. If you can have reflections or you can have shadows, just having that reiteration of the subject or the focal point can create some unity where things are being repeated. They have this simplistic feel where it's harmony between the foreground and the background. It's being either reflected or the shadow is reinforcing that shape, those shapes and those lines. So it helps to, also those diagonals help to lead our eye back in the scene. This is an example of having backlighting. So when you shoot with the window in front of you or behind your subject, it's going to create a silhouette like you see here in this chair shape. So maybe something that would improve this image would be if they had something in clear silhouette where you could see the whole shape and it had a very distinctive shape instead of something that's sort of hard to tell where that shape ends and the shadow begins. So maybe something like that. If there was like a cat sitting here on this ottoman, it would be even better adding a living focal point to this ordinarily stationary type setting. So animals are a great way to add visual interest in your piece, and that sense of timing that, you know, this photograph is a fleeting moment in time that you've captured and now have created a memory with that photograph. So think about the purpose for why you're photographing the scene that you pick. Okay, so I'm going to give that probably an 8 out of 9. And it is possible to have some criticism on your photograph and still have a 9 out of 9. So just because there's something that could be improved does not make it any less of a photograph. Okay, so photo number 3 is a similar scene with the shadows from the window, but this time it also incorporates some shadows from the trees outside, and it has a really great use of rule of thirds. So you'll notice that this line, this very, very striking, strong, vertical line in our scene is right on that rule of thirds line. So they were able to fill the frame. So the 2/3 of the frame are filled with the shadows of the tree beyond the window. So we really see that brick texture in contrast to the window texture. And we have some interesting light and shadows at play coming in. I would say this is a 9 out of 9 picture. If I had to pick something that could be improved, I would say maybe use Photoshop. So think about how you might be able to increase some of those saturation of colors. So maybe the reds could be brighter, the greens could be more intense. Maybe this here is almost a little distracting, this edge of whatever that decorative element is. So either using the Photoshop corrective tools to get rid of that, like the clone stamp to paint with these pixels up here over this distracting element, or just crop it out completely and crop the image in to here. This can still be the rule of thirds if we cropped in a little bit. So those would just be some of my nitpicky little pointers if I had to find something wrong with it, but overall this is a 9 out of 9. Very interesting play of shadows and light. So let's enter that for photo number 3. And this is useful for grading your own photographs too, and judging whether or not, you know, it has that creativity of angle, vantage point. If you're shooting from the ground, looking up at something to make it look really big, that would be a creative vantage point versus just always photographing from, you know, our eye level. Think about getting above the eye level, looking down on your subject, below, looking up from the side. So think that's why you have 100 photos, so you can try a lot of different vantage points. Okay, so far this student's doing pretty good. Let's look at photo number 4. Aw, here's baby George. He doesn't look like that anymore. So right off the bat, I recognize that this photograph was taken with a DSLR camera because they were able to achieve really shallow depth of field that you normally can't get with a cell phone. Cell phones want to have everything in focus from like the background all the way to the foreground. You have to really have a lot of separation between your elements to get that blur in a cell phone. But with this, we have him right up on that tree branch. They're only an inch apart and the tree branch is totally out of focus and George's eyeball is in focus. So with animals and with people, if the eye is not in focus, you miss the shot. So if you focus on the tip of my nose, that's not going to be as good of a grade as if you focused on the eyeballs, because eyes are really the windows to the soul, and those are the points that we as humans are attracted to. When we look at someone, we look at their eyes. When we look at an animal, we look at the eyes. So that's a form of communication, non-verbally. So we're just programmed as humans to look at the eyes first. So you definitely want to reward your viewer by having those be in focus. We don't like looking at things that are out of focus. It's hard to focus on. Humans don't like, our brains don't like things that don't make sense. So in a photograph, whatever's in focus is where your attention's going to go first. So they did a great job of directing that attention. George is almost centered, but he's a little off center. So I would say with these compositions, either put your subject directly in the middle, make it a symmetrical composition and give it some formal balance that way, or throw your scene off balance with asymmetry. So this means there's no line of symmetry where both sides are the same. Using the rule of thirds, you can do that by getting your focal point, your subject out of the center of the frame and allowing those eyeballs or whatever's important to fall on a visual magnet. So he's almost centered, but he's off center enough that the majority of the frame is taken up with the background, and that can be a good strategy to fill the frame with negative space. So you zoom out a little bit, all of his little fingers and toes are in the frame, so he's not sinking in quicksand. He's got some breathing room around him visually, and they have a really nice framing element with this tree trunk here. This branch is creating a bordering element so that our eyes, when they travel this way, hit this this line and go back into the focal point with George. So on this side, our eyes kind of fall off the frame a little bit, but over here, it's a very solid framing element to keep our eye on the focal point. So one thing to be improved would be maybe make it more rule of thirds where his eye is on a visual, the visual magnet where they intersect those vertical and horizontal lines. And maybe see about blurring the cage a little bit more. So this is the netting that's between the photographer and George. So it's kind of focused on George, but you can still see that netting. So to make it look even more natural, maybe opening the cage so that you're not shooting through a mesh might be a better subject. Okay, but overall, I would say that is a 9 out of 9. And I'm not biased at all because that's my lizard. I always like seeing pictures of George, and that's why I got him. He's a class pet for photography for a reason, because he's always doing something different, and it's a great moving subject to take pictures of throughout the semester. He'll never look the same twice. Okay, and then finally we have another picture. You can see another angle of that cute dog. He's still got his little tongue out, but now we have the added element of the human hand. And notice he doesn't look like he's sinking in quicksand anymore. The photographer has gotten so close that she's cropping him at the head and shoulders. And that's a very pleasing way to crop your portrait, to get close, to see the details on the face without having the whole body in there, but also without cropping at a joint to make it look awkward. And then her hand serves as a leading line, and you have this kind of proportion where, you know, whatever's in front is bigger than whatever's further back. So it draws our eye into the scene with those diagonal lines, so we can really see the dog, see how happy he is, see that bond, that connection, the literal visual connection between them, but also the emotional connection, adding some creativity to the scene. So I would say this photo is 9 out of 9. Something to be improved. Oh, I could see this scene being even more shallow depth of field. So maybe blurring the background even more in Photoshop, because this was probably taken on her cell phone. Or having everything be in focus. So I would go one way or the other. Instead of having medium depth of field, I would have either great depth of field where you can see the dog, you can see the bracelets, you can see the trees in the background, everything's crisp and sharp and focused, or make it even more so shallow depth of field so that we really definitely have no doubt that this dog's nose is right what we need to focus on. Okay. So I would give that photo also a 9 out of 9. Again, just because I find criticism does not mean that you get penalized with your grade, because we can all improve, right? Okay. And then she has her screenshot. So I see the screenshot right here, so I can see what she took pictures of. And I can see that she took a series of different things. Here's her series of her dog. So she chose kind of like the best one from each of these different series. I'm not even sure what that is. I think it's a flag. This one's the front of the school. And notice she didn't choose any of those for her final 5. So maybe, you know, she took a lot of shots, but it just didn't work out. That's totally fine. Okay, so she did get that check mark, those 5 points for her screenshot. So if you turn in only 5 photos without a screenshot, the best that you can get is like an A-. So here she missed 2 points, so that's 48 out of 50, and then I extrapolate that out, it's 96 out of 100, because every assignment is out of 100. So I might make that blue. And you can see it takes a little bit of time to grade. So I have 100 students every time I have an assignment due. So it takes a little bit of time. Thank you for your patience as I give you good feedback. So in the comments section, I like to sandwich these comments. So I start with something positive. I can always find something positive in anybody's photograph. Even if it's a photo of the floor, I'll say, wow, that's really well lit. But maybe the composition could be better. So, you know, everyone gets criticism. Even if you get a 100%, you're still going to get some helpful hints of how to improve in the future, because we're lifelong learners as photographers. We're never done. And then I like to end with a positive. So let's see. I really enjoyed her compositions. I feel like she focused on interesting subject matter. So I could say just what I said, really enjoyed the balance, maybe the asymmetrical balance. So not everything was centered, of your compositions and the unique plays of light and dark, or, you know, I could say shadows or something like that. I can, even my criticism, I try and somewhat hide it as like a negative. So I can see you starting. So that kind of implies maybe some growth is required in this area, but you're starting. I can see you starting to get comfortable with the rule of thirds and capturing I hate the word interesting because it's like a non-word. You're not making a statement like, oh, that's interesting. That could be good or bad. So maybe capturing thought provoking subject matter, because it did. It made me question, why did she focus her camera on this? How did she get her dog to cooperate? You know, there's lots of questions that can be attributed to interesting photographs. So I really enjoyed the asymmetrical balance of your compositions and the unique plays of light and dark. I can see you starting to get comfortable with the rule of thirds, so that implies that the rule of thirds is a good thing to practice, and capturing thought-provoking subject matter. Okay, so now I choose a photograph. That's my favorite, and I'm not going to be biased. I won't choose George. even though my eye keeps going there. I really liked this one. I feel like this harnessed the rules that we've been talking about the best. With the rule of thirds, with framing, she's literally framing this other window inside this window, so a frame within a frame is a great thing to capture. So I'm going to Command-Shift-4, capture a screenshot of this picture. And then this is just a real quick way for you to see which photograph grabbed my attention, because that matters. That gives you an idea of what to continue in the future, and maybe which scenes were not as successful. And it is possible to have all wonderful top 5 photographs, and then it can be very difficult for me to choose. Okay, so image, upload from computer. So even though this subject matter was not really lofty, it's not telling a story necessarily, I think just formally, this photograph has the best composition strategies on display. Okay, so then I make it fit in that little frame. And then there it is. Okay, so this is the final scoring guide. I would normally put the student's name on it, and then Command-Shift-4. I'll show you what I do and how I give you feedback. So once I've captured a screenshot of your grade, the one I like the best out of your photographs, my helpful hints and comments, and the numerical rating of your photographs, which again, numbers are kind of arbitrary with art. So that's why I try and keep them as minimal as possible. We don't need a whole huge math problem. It's meant to be simplified. Because most students, if you turn in the work, you get an A. Your photos usually have to be really lacking to get very low scores. But that doesn't mean don't try. That doesn't mean don't get better. It's meant to be an intrinsic motivation that you just want to produce artwork that satisfies your soul on some level. Okay, so I'm going to upload that screenshot. So it's on my desktop. Here it is. So this is the final scoring guide. And then I'll show you what I do in Infinite Campus without showing any names. So this is just a screenshot of Infinite Campus. So you'll notice here's where I put the score. So I would type in 96. And then in the comments section, I will go up here to my scoring guide, the image of the scoring guide. I don't give you the actual drawing because then people can like change the score. Not that that's ever happened in the history of Google, but I click share, and then I share this link. Instead of just do schools, I make it for anyone, so that anybody like your parents looking at this assignment in Google Classroom or in Google or in Infinite Campus, they can also see what your grade is. So I copy this link, and this is, by the way, the link that you need to copy when filling out the scoring guide. You go to the 3 little dots, hit share, and then copy this link. So I copied it, and then I'm gonna go to Infinite Campus. Here's my screenshot of what it would look like. So here's where I type in the score. And in the comment section, that's where I paste the shareable link. So if you want to see, I got an 85. I wonder why. You can click on the link to the scoring guide, and you can see the comments. You can see which one I like the best. You can see the rationale for what your grade was. And usually if you have below an A, it's because you didn't turn in your screenshot. That's 9 times out of 10 what happened. Usually your final 5, there's usually not too much wrong with them. Because out of 100 pictures, at least 5 are going to be really good. And the art form is in knowing how to select those 5 out of 100 and to be choosy with your own work. So I also sometimes use Voca, which is a website for recording audio files of, feedback. So I might also, if I'm like in a hurry, I might just record audio feedback as to why you got your grade. So most of the time I can look at a photograph and know right off the bat if it's going to be an A or a B or something lower. There usually has to be something really wrong with it for it to be like a C or something like that. So most of the time students, if they just don't turn work in, that's when they do bad. But if you turn work in, you should get the grade. And like I said, I'll either record a recorded message as to why you got that grade with like some helpful hints and some compliments. Or I will do this more formal version of the scoring guide, and it should be in your Infinite Campus shortly. Okay, thanks guys. I will See you later. I appreciate you tuning in and giving it a shot. Maybe even try grading some of your own photographs with those same criteria. Bye.